I've been a nurse for years, but about 3 weeks ago I experienced something I can't shake off. I usually work the night shift at a small hospital, a place that feels more like home than anything else. The quiet, bright halls usually soothe me. But that night was different. When I started my shift, I felt sleepy. I'd just finished my rounds. Everything was calm. No beeping machines or loud voices. Then I heard it. Soft footsteps behind me. It was late, so it could have been another nurse. I didn't turn around. I brushed it off. Maybe it was my tired mind playing tricks. But those footsteps didn't stop. Night after night, they followed me. Each step sounded closer, a hint of panic creeping in. I tried to convince myself I was hearing things. On my rounds, I listened closely, trying to figure it out. My heart raced, but still, I told myself it was just fatigue. Then things got weird. One night, I found the medication cabinets messed up. I had just organized them. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I tried to dismiss it as stress. And the lights? They flickered constantly. It was annoying. Sometimes they'd buzz and go dark, leaving me in dim light. I shook my head, told myself it was old wiring. But it didn't end there. During one round, I noticed a patient's room door slightly open every time I passed. The bed was always unoccupied. I thought it was supposed to be vacant. Why was the door always ajar? I felt uneasy. I started avoiding that hall, my pulse quickening whenever I walked by. Each night, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. It was unsettling. I thought of my daughter and hoped she was safe. While checking on my patients, I found my hands trembling. I was fully alert now, and I dreaded the moment I'd have to face that door again. On my last night of that shift, I found myself in front of it. My heart raced. I clutched the handle tightly. I wanted to open it, but fear held me back. It was too quiet. I could hear my own breath. Those footsteps had vanished. For a moment, I convinced myself I imagined everything, but I couldn't resist. I opened the door, my heart pounding. Inside was darkness. I blinked and stepped in, ready for anything. Then I saw something. I don't even know what. It was something in the corner, twisted and wrong. My breath caught in my throat. Suddenly, I felt cold all over. I stumbled back, slamming the door shut as panic surged. I didn't know what I just saw, but I couldn't stay there anymore. I turned and ran down the hall, my heart racing. The footsteps started again, echoing behind me. I wasn't alone, and I couldn't escape. I darted down the hall, my heart hammering in my chest. Each footstep echoed around me, tapping in rhythm with my racing pulse. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting something to emerge from the shadows. The hall remained empty, but the sensation of being pursued clung to me like a heavy blanket. I rounded the corner and took refuge in the break room, locking the door behind me. I leaned against it, trying to catch my breath, but the panic refused to fade. I tried to convince myself it was just the fear of the unknown, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. The darkness behind that door felt alive. As I caught my breath, I looked around the familiar room. The clock ticked loudly, time stretching in the eerie quiet. I pulled out my phone, tempted to call someone, anyone. But who would believe me? I didn't even know what to say. Hey, I think I'm being followed by footsteps? Instead, I opened group chats with fellow nurses. One who worked day shifts had just signed off. I hesitated, wondering if I should text her about the disturbances. But what could she do? Call and check on me? No, I couldn't drag anyone else into this. I needed to figure it out myself. But then my phone flashed. A notification lit up the screen. A video sent from one of the nurses who pulled night shifts last week. I pressed play, curiosity momentarily overriding my fear. It showed the empty halls of the hospital. The camera was shaky, as if someone was nervously holding it. I squinted at the screen. Just a boring clip, until a shadow darted across the hallway. My breath caught in my throat. The timestamp showed it was taken during my shift. I could hardly believe it. The video ended, but my heart raced faster. I stared at the screen, wondering if it was a prank or if someone was playing tricks on us, but deep inside, I felt that it was real. I had seen it. Something unsettling was following me. I heard a noise, a soft tapping coming from the break room door where I was hiding. My heart stopped. No, it couldn't be. Not here, not now. I moved slowly to the door and pressed my ear against it. The tapping sound continued, rhythmic and persistent. It wasn't a knock, it was a scratching. I backed away, looking for an escape route. The only other door led back into the dark hall. I glanced at my phone again. Nothing. No new messages. I should have told someone. I should have left. The scratching stopped, leaving an ominous silence. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered and died, plunging the room into nothingness. My pulse quickened as I felt along the wall, trying to find light switches, anything. I could barely see my own hands. That's when I heard it. A quiet whispering echoed in the darkness, a voice I didn't recognize. I stayed frozen, my breath shallow. I couldn't make out the words, but I felt each syllable in the pit of my stomach. I needed to get out. I couldn't stay here any longer. As panic surged through me, I made my way back to the door. I gripped the handle and took a deep breath, preparing to face whatever was waiting for me beyond the frame. What I found on the other side would change everything. I turned the handle and pushed the door open. Cold air rushed in, sending chills down my spine. I squinted into the hallway, half expecting something to leap at me from the shadows. It was still dark, but I could see the faint outline of the walls stretching away into the void. I stepped out, my heart pounding as my feet hit the cool, polished floor. I felt more exposed now, even though the break room had been suffocating. I needed to move, to find some light, something familiar. As I walked down the hallway, the silence hung heavily. Every sound I made felt amplified, the scuffle of my shoes, the rustling of my scrubs. I hesitated at every corner, listening for the scrapes or whispers that had haunted me earlier. But there was nothing, just the relentless ticking of the distant clock. I turned a corner, and my heart skipped. There, up ahead, glimmered a flickering fluorescent bulb. Relief washed over me like a wave. I hurried toward it, desperate for some reassurance that I wasn't alone. Just as I reached the light, it buzzed and blinked out, plunging me into another layer of darkness. I cursed under my breath, frustration boiling over. I was too worn down to start over. Taking a deep breath, I pressed on, relying on instinct more than vision. That's when I heard the footsteps. Soft, precise, like someone was pacing behind me. I froze, pulse roaring in my ears. I didn't dare look back. I had to keep moving. I darted to the nearest door, a supply closet. It was my only chance to hide. I yanked it open and slipped inside, pressing my body flat against the wall. It was cramped, the smell of antiseptic filling my lungs. Just as I thought I'd escaped whatever was chasing me, the footsteps stopped. I held my breath, praying for silence and hoping it wouldn't give away my location. My heart raced as the scratching resumed, even more insistent than before. This time I was certain. The sound was coming from outside the closet door. Suddenly, I felt something touch the doorknob. I stifled a gasp, my blood running cold. Someone, or something, was trying to get in. I pressed my back harder against the wall, terrified to move or make a sound. The door started to creak. I thought of the only escape route I had, the window above the cabinets. Just as I made up my mind to climb up, the door jerked open with a loud bang. I didn't think. I just acted. I scrambled up onto the top of the cabinet. I peered down, trying to see the intruder. That's when I saw it. A figure, cloaked in shadow, staring right at me. My breath caught in my throat. "Why are you hiding?" it whispered, voice like glass shattering in my mind. I didn't want to answer. I didn't want to be here. But now I had no choice. I had to find out what it wanted, or risk losing everything. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Just staring at that shadowy figure made my skin crawl. It shifted slightly, and I felt the weight of its gaze bearing down on me, as if it could see right through my fear. "What do you want?" I whispered, the words escaping before I could stop them. The figure took a small step forward, and I tensed. Its face was hidden, but I could feel something cold and calculating in the way it moved. "To help you," it said. But the words felt more like a threat than an offer. "Help me?" I echoed, heart racing. "You've got to be kidding." "Stop hiding, and I'll show you," it said softly, voice twisting like a vine wrapping around my mind. "You can't stay up there forever." I looked down at the narrow space between the top of the cabinet and the ceiling. My only escape route. I needed a plan. If I climbed out, would it let me go? Or was it just waiting for me to make a move? "Please," I said, desperation creeping into my voice. "I didn't do anything." "Everything is about what you did, or what you didn't see." It stepped back, and for a brief moment, I saw a glint of something metallic in its hand. My breath hitched. I had to act. I jumped down from the cabinet, landing on my feet. The noise echoed around the small space. "Stay back!" I shouted, ready to bolt if I had to. It tilted its head, showing only darkness where its face should be. "You'll see soon enough." Just then, I heard another sound, something thumping in the hall outside. The figure turned, instantly alert, almost as if it had been waiting for this. My heart dropped. Was it another threat or something else entirely? "Get out of here!" it hissed, movement swift and urgent. "Now!" Adrenaline surged, and without thinking, I dashed past the figure, desperate to reach the door. I didn't want to give the shadow any reason to come after me. I flung the closet door open and raced into the hall, my feet pounding against the floor. The flickering bulb's light illuminated my path briefly, then darkened again. My pulse quickened even more. I could hear the figure behind me, whispering something, but I just focused on getting away. I turned a corner and skidded to a halt. A figure loomed in the half-light ahead, blocking my way. It was another shadow, but this one stood still, arms crossed. "Where do you think you're going?" it asked, voice deep and menacing. A wave of panic washed over me. I was trapped. My eyes darted to find another escape route, but the hallway was a dead end. I had no choice. I had to confront whatever lurked in that darkness behind me. But the footsteps, the soft, precise steps, were returning, drawing closer. I was running out of time. I felt my chest tighten. The figure blocking my path, one shadow among many, shifted slightly. The dim light cast an eerie glow over its features, heightening my dread. "What do you want from me?" I asked, voice shaky. "Answers," it replied, stepping closer. "You've been hiding from the truth." "The truth? What truth?" I wanted to scoff, to tell it that I was just a scared teenager trying to survive this nightmare. But I couldn't find the words. Behind me, the soft footsteps grew louder, echoing through the hallway. I turned my head slightly, trying to gauge how much time I had. The shadow behind me was getting closer. I could feel the air shift as it moved, like a predator closing in on its prey. "Look," I said, forcing myself to meet the creature's dark gaze. "I don't know what you want, but I can't help you. Just let me go." The figure grinned, revealing nothing but darkness. "But you don't even know what you're offering." I didn't have time to decipher that. I needed to move, to find a way out. My heart raced as I glanced around, searching for anything I could use. The walls felt like they were closing in, and I spotted an old fire exit sign above my head. It was a long shot, but maybe— "Get out of my way!" I shouted, making a break for it. I pushed past the figure, desperate to reach the door. My fingertips brushed against its cold, solid form, and a jolt of fear shot through me. But the exit was only a few steps away. As I reached for the handle, the ominous shadow lunged forward, gripping my arm. I felt paralyzed. "You need to understand what happened that night," it hissed. "What?" I shouted, panic clawing at my throat. "What happened?" Before it could respond, a loud crash reverberated down the hall. The footsteps behind me halted, followed by a deep, guttural growl. Something else had joined the fray. I tore myself away from the figure's hold, adrenaline fueling my movements. I flung the door open and stumbled into the stairwell. I didn't look back. I just ran. My feet flew over the steps as I descended, the heavy thuds of footsteps chasing me echoing off the concrete walls. I reached the bottom floor, gasping for air. Something was wrong. It was too quiet now. The usual hum of fluorescent lights was absent, leaving an oppressive silence. I felt exposed, vulnerable. Then I heard it, a whisper, low and insidious, drenched in malice. "You can't escape the truth." I turned to scan the area but saw nothing. Just shadows dancing in the corners. My instincts screamed at me to keep moving, but I felt the urge to stop, to go back. Maybe I could confront whatever was hunting me. But that thought evaporated as a flicker of movement caught my eye. Someone was at the far end of the corridor. A figure shrouded in darkness, watching. And that's when everything went dark. I woke up disoriented. My heart raced and my body felt heavy, almost as if I'd been sleeping for days. The darkness pressed down on me, but I could still make out the shadowy outline of the stairwell I had just come through. I wasn't sure how long I'd been out. I pushed myself up, scanning the area, my breath shaky. The whisper had stopped, replaced by an unsettling stillness. I was alone, or at least I thought I was, but the sense that something was coming back was palpable. I had to get moving. I clambered to my feet and tiptoed toward the shadows. The air felt cold on my skin as I made my way down the corridor, the yellow emergency lights flickering with annoyance. Each step echoed. I could almost hear the thudding of my own heart mingling with the silence around me. Just then, I noticed a faint glow further down the hallway. I squinted, trying to determine its source. Was it another exit? I started toward it, longing for anything that might lead me out of this maelstrom of darkness. But as I got closer, I realized it was not an exit at all. It was a monitor, like the ones in the hospital nurse stations, flashing with weak neon colors. My chest tightened again. I hesitated, throat dry with fear. Why was this here? I stepped closer, peering at the screen. It displayed a security feed, grainy images of the various corridors I had just been running through. My heart dropped as I spotted myself in one of the frames, still in my running clothes, hair wild and face etched with panic. But I wasn't alone. The other monitors showed figures, shadowy, indistinct, crawling along the walls like spiders. They moved with an unsettling fluidity, darting in and out of sight. My blood ran cold. "What are you?" I whispered, desperate for a sign, any sign that might explain what I was witnessing. A rustle echoed behind me, snapping my attention. I turned, instinctively bracing myself for whatever horror lurked beneath the shadows. But no one was there. Still trembling, I turned back to the screen. That's when I saw it. One of the shadows on the monitor was moving closer to my frame, almost as if it knew I was watching. My breath quickened. The figure drifted in and out of focus, but its movements were deliberate, like it was toying with me. Fear gnawed at my insides. Suddenly, a loud crash sounded from the hallway behind me, shattering the eerie stillness. I whipped around, pulse racing. The noise had come from the direction I had fled earlier. Were they back? Taking a deep breath, I ran back toward the exit, the stabbing adrenaline invigorating my limbs. I could feel the eyes upon me even as I sprinted. I couldn't look back, not now. As I reached the door, I hesitated. Should I open it or stay? Panic surged. I had to take my chances. I yanked open the door and my stomach dropped. The hallway was gone, replaced by endless darkness fading into a void. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. There was no escaping this place. Then I heard a familiar whisper creeping into my thoughts again. You can't escape the truth. And it was then I understood. This wasn't just a nightmare. I had opened the door to something far worse. The darkness closed in tighter, suffocating me. I blinked, trying to adjust my eyes, but it was like staring into an endless void. Panic surged through me, pushing me to take a step back. I felt the cold metal of the doorknob still in my grip, but the door was just a facade now. My escape had turned into a trap. Stay calm, I told myself. Think. I needed a plan. I forced my breathing to slow, focusing on the silence. Every nerve in my body screamed for me to run, but running would mean heading into an even deeper unknown. The flickering lights along the corridor behind me were still my only source of warmth, but a shiver swept down my spine as shadows danced along the walls. I had to choose. Stay here and face the dark, or return to the faint glow. I made my decision. With one last glance at the horrifying abyss, I retreated back into the beam of light. Slipping past the door, I felt the weight of it close behind me, but the ominous whisper echoed in my mind. As I rounded the corner, my foot snagged on a loose tile, sending me sprawling to the ground. My palms hit the cold floor with a sharp sting. Embarrassment mixed with fear as I scrambled up, my heart racing from the fall and dreading what I might find around me. Then I heard it again, a soft scuffle, like cloth brushing against skin. It was subtle but persistent. I froze, forcing myself to listen harder. The sound was closer now, just out of sight, like someone, or something, was moving in my direction. "Please no," I whispered, the words barely escaping my lips. I pressed my back against the wall, desperate for cover as I peered into the darkened corridor ahead. Shadows twisted and morphed, and I strained my eyes to discern what lay ahead. Suddenly, a figure stumbled into view, a nurse, drenched in a terrible light that painted her face in eerie hues. Her eyes were wide and unseeing, as if she were trapped in a trance. I opened my mouth to call out, but my voice caught in my throat. She turned her head in my direction, though it felt like she was looking right through me. The sound of her soft breaths filled the air. I was torn between relief at seeing someone else and a gnawing dread. What had she encountered here? "Help me," I finally managed to croak. I took a cautious step forward, trying to bridge the gap between us, but she flinched away as if I were a specter. "What's wrong?" Her voice was a tortured rasp. "They're coming." Just then, she glanced back down the hallway as if sensing a presence I couldn't see. "You have to hide!" Before I could react, she sprinted past me, disappearing into the shadows behind. My heart dropped, tangled in fear and confusion. What had just happened? I couldn't just stand there. If things were that dangerous, I had to find a place to hide, or worse, a way to fight back. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I felt frozen in place. The shadows whispered to me, beckoning me and reminding me of the truth I wasn't ready to face. Then I heard it. The pounding footsteps echoed through the corridor, growing louder and closer with every heartbeat. I had only seconds left. I spun around, searching desperately for a hiding space. Then everything faded to black. The darkness enveloped me like a thick fog. I inhaled sharply, the sharp scent of antiseptic mingling with fear. I couldn't stay in the hallway, so I moved instinctively, pressed against the wall and edging away from the sound of the footsteps. They echoed through the corridor, growing closer. I stumbled forward, my heart pounding. My eyes darted back and forth, searching for somewhere to hide. The faint flicker of light from the nurse's station caught my attention. Maybe I could find safety there. I hurriedly made my way, careful to stay silent. My pulse quickened as I reached the station. I peered inside. The place was cluttered but vacant, monitors beeping softly in the background. I slipped in through the doorway, closing it behind me with a soft click that echoed like a shout in my ears. I crouched behind the reception counter, my breath shallow. I could still hear those footsteps, heavy and deliberate, moving through the halls. My mind raced. What was happening? Who was out there? Then I noticed something on the counter. A file folder lay open, papers spilling out. I glanced down, my curiosity getting the better of my fear. The front paper was labeled Patient Records. My heart sank. If this had anything to do with the nurse, I had to know more. I scanned the paper, gripping it tightly. It had details about several patients, all detained here against their will. Names, numbers, and unsettling conditions filled the lines. A chill ran down my spine. I flipped through more pages, each revealing a darker secret than the last. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the silence. The door to the nurse's station swung open. I froze, barely daring to breathe. A figure stepped inside, silhouetted against the dim light from the hallway. "Get out!" a voice shouted, echoing with panic. It was the nurse, her face pale, eyes wild. "You have to leave!" Before I could respond, she dove behind the counter, pressing herself against the floor. My heart raced. The footsteps were getting louder, menacingly approaching. Had they found us? I leaned closer to her, desperate for answers. "Who's coming? What's happening?" She shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "They won't stop until they find everyone. We have to go, now." "But where?" My mind raced as I heard the footsteps halt right outside the door. They were waiting. Then everything fell silent. My blood ran cold. The quiet was deafening, but my senses were heightened. It felt wrong, too still. I could barely hear my own heartbeat over the muffled sound of my breath. That's when I saw it. A shadow passed beneath the door. I swallowed hard, the realization sinking in. They were already inside. I needed to act fast. I darted my eyes around the nurse's station, searching for anything that could help us escape. My mind raced with possibilities, but nothing seemed safe. Hiding there felt like a trap. I turned to the nurse, desperate. "Can we get out another way?" She nodded slightly, her eyes still wide with fear. "There's a back exit through the supply room, but we have to move fast." The shadow beneath the door shifted again, and I could feel the weight of their presence just outside. I slunk lower, trying to control my breathing. "On 3, I whispered, hoping she could hear me over my pounding heart. 1, 2. Before I said 3, there was a loud bang against the door. The impact made me jump, and the nurse grabbed my arm tightly. "Now!" she shouted. We bolted from behind the counter, my feet pounding the floor as we sprinted toward the supply room at the back of the nurse's station. I could hear the door creak as someone tested the handle. I glanced back in time to see the door splinter. Only a few more hits, and it would give way. We stumbled into the supply room. The darkness was thicker here, but I noticed a flickering light bulb overhead. Shelves lined with boxes and medical supplies surrounded us. I quickly scanned for the back exit. "There!" I shouted, pointing to a metal door in the corner. It looked old and worn, but it was our only chance. The nurse was right behind me, and together we pushed through the door, stumbling into a narrow corridor. My heart raced as we pressed on, the light from the hallway disappearing behind us. "Do you know where this leads?" I asked, panting. "No," she replied, her voice shaking. "But we can't stop." As we maneuvered through the dark corridor, we could hear distant voices echoing. They were shouting, but I couldn't make out the words. My stomach twisted at the thought of being caught. I thought of the files, the patients, and what that nurse had said. Someone wanted us found, and we were running out of time. Suddenly, our luck turned. I saw a faint light at the end of the corridor. I grabbed the nurse's wrist, urging her towards it. "That has to be an exit," I whispered, my breath hitching with hope. But as we got closer, the voices grew louder, clearer. "They went this way. Don't let them escape." Panic shot through my veins. I stopped short, thinking of our options. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice trembling. Before she could respond, a shout came from behind us. "There they are!" I turned to see dark figures emerging from the shadows, faces looming, eyes glinting with intent. "Run!" I yelled, pulling the nurse with me as the figures charged. We sprinted toward the light, but with every step, I could hear their footsteps gaining on us. The light was so close. I could almost reach out and touch it. Just as we approached the exit, a hand shot out, grabbing my shoulder. That's when everything went dark. I jolted awake in a hospital bed, the steady beep of a heart monitor filling the sterile room. Confusion washed over me as I looked around, sunlight spilling through the window and casting soft shadows on the wall. It felt oddly peaceful, almost jarring after the chaos I'd experienced. As I shifted, pain flared from my shoulder where an IV line had been inserted. I glanced down to see my scrubs replaced by a hospital gown, the knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. My heart raced as I acutely recalled the chase, the piercing whispers, the terrifying shadows, and the nurse begging me to escape. "Relax," a voice broke through my thoughts. I turned to see a familiar face, a fellow nurse, Mandy, standing at the door. Her brow was creased with concern. "You've been out for a while." "What happened?" I croaked. My throat felt parched. "Where's the other nurse?" Mandy looked away, hesitation flashing across her features. "You were found alone in the supply room. There was no one else." She paused, collecting her thoughts. "You were mumbling about shadows and chasing." Chills ran down my spine. I forced myself to focus. "What happened to the figures? The whispers?" Mandy shifted uncomfortably. "The police didn't find anything unusual. Just you." "What do you mean? I wasn't alone." I felt my voice rise, panic threatening to consume me again. "I swear there was another nurse. She interrupted gently. "You were up all night. It's possible you were hallucinating from fatigue." "No!" I protested, shaking my head. "They were real! They were there!" She pressed her lips together, concerned but skeptical. "Just take it easy. We'll get you some fluids." Frustration ebbed and flowed within me. I wanted proof, a reassurance that I hadn't imagined the shadows lurking in the hall. I thought of the medical records, the whispers of truth they held, but how could I make anyone believe me? Mandy stepped away to fetch a cup of water. Alone, I let the memories wash over me, the fear, the figures, the chaos. They felt so vivid, yet I was suddenly unsure. Had I really seen them? Or had my mind conjured horrors from stress? Minutes passed, then Mandy returned, placing the cup in my hand. "Drink," she coaxed, her sympathetic eyes holding mine. I took sips, relishing the coolness as I mentally scrambled through my experiences. Moments later, a doctor entered with a clipboard. "How are we feeling today?" he asked, scanning my charts. "Any headaches? Dizziness?" Before I could respond, the door swung open unexpectedly and 2 police officers stepped in. My heart raced again. "Can we ask you a few questions?" one of them said, his tone serious yet unthreatening. "Sure," I replied, forcing calm over the panic. The urgency I felt before crept back as they began to speak. They asked questions about the night, the shadows, the whispers. I recounted as best I could, leaving out fantasies, hoping for some semblance of acceptance. I watched their faces as they exchanged glances, but when they moved to leave, I asked, "Did you find anything? Any evidence? Anything at all?" "We didn't see anything unusual in the hospital," one officer replied, tightening his jaw as he walked out, leaving me with the unsettling sense of déjà vu lingering in the air. As they departed, I noticed the sun dipping lower outside the window. I had survived, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd slipped away from something far more sinister. My heart pounded in my chest as worry gnawed at me. Mandy returned moments later, concern etched on her face. "Did they find anything?" "I don't know," I whispered, my voice taut with fear. "But I can't shake this feeling that something's still lurking in the shadows." Her expression softened as I stared into the distance, grappling with the truth I now knew hung in the air, real or imagined. The whispers had pressed against my mind, insisting that the darkness might never truly be far behind. As I lay back on my pillow, listening to the distant sounds of the hospital, I could still feel the weight of the shadows resting just out of reach. Would I ever know the truth? I frowned, staring at the ceiling above. I could still hear the echoes of footsteps, as if they were stalking me, waiting in the silence just beyond my comprehension. I had escaped, at least for now, but I knew. I'd never really left that darkness behind.